Well, hello, backcountry.church. This is Pastor Kyle, and we are doing a conversation with Markos. It is so good to see you. Where are we?
We are right in Fresno, California.
Fresno, I love it. Well, I want to give a quick, who is this guy? Markos is married. He's got like 10 kids. No grandkids yet, though.
No.
And you're a medical doctor. You've been practicing for how long?
Still practicing, 26 years.
26 years. Are you any good?
It's still practicing.
So what? And he also is highly involved and leads what we'll talk about as well, the Horn of Africa mission. That's on your shirt right there. In fact, I'll just say up front, I'm going to put that Horn of Africa mission on the screen right here. You can go to their website. If you want to be involved, you want to email him, you can. But so glad that you're here. Now, how did you get into practicing medicine? Let's just talk about that.
Interesting. I always want to be a doctor.
Okay.
And I was a refugee in Italy, and I was a 16-year-old refugee. And the Catholic priest has pity, especially the Jesuits.
Okay.
And this one particular Jesuit priest gave me a job at the headquarters of the Jesuits in Rome, working in the library. So 2 years after working there, my older brother and I got a green card to come to America. And our uncle who lives in Santa Clara sponsored us, so we came to Santa Clara, California.
Ah.
So I said, thank you for helping me for these last 2 years, and so forth and so forth. And this priest said, where are you going? I told him, Santa Clara, California. So he said, when you get there, there is a university, a Jesuit university called Santa Clara University. Talk to them, maybe they will help you. I said, oh, okay. So about a couple of weeks after I arrived in Santa Clara, I said, that priest told me to go and check. So let me go and check. Went to the school, big school. He didn't give me any names. So I was like,
Santa Clara University.
Santa Clara
it's
University.
A notable university.
So I said, okay, who do I talk? Then I saw a sign says undergraduate admission. So I said, maybe that would be a place to go. So I went there, and there was another Jesuit priest sitting there. I said, that would be a good idea to talk to. So I told him my story. To my surprise, the priest said, I have a letter from Rome to help you.
No way.
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yes.
Wow.
So, so we got that letter.
That's amazing.
And the priest said, do you have, show me your school, records. I'm a refugee, I don't have anything. So he said, so how do I know you can handle the university education? So he said, why don't you go to a community college for 2-3 quarters, and we'll see your grade. If you do well, we'll help you. So I went to De Anza College in Cupertino.
That's where I went.
Okay, did pretty good for 2-3 quarters. They saw my grade, so they gave me free scholarship to Santa Clara
That's
University.
amazing.
Yeah. So study biology there, and then went to UC Davis for medical school.
Wow.
The blessing of God.
Now you've said a lot there. First of all, you grew up in Ethiopia.
Mm-hmm.
What led you to be a refugee? What happened in the country?
Yeah.
I know this was back in the 1800s, but what was going on?
So in Ethiopia in 1974, the communists came and overthrew the king, Haile Selassie, and Ethiopia became a communist nation. And they were taking all the youth to go to fight. There was a war with Somalia, there was a civil war in the north. So as a youth, there is no hope but to be in the military. So my mom and dad, with little resource they had, they sent my older brother, who was 18 at the time, I was 16, to get out of Ethiopia and find a place, a safe place.
And so you went from Ethiopia to Italy.
Italy.
That's a terrible place to be.
Actually, that was the best place. Eating spaghetti, beautiful Rome. And then I came to know Christ there, so it couldn't be any better.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you were in Rome.
In Rome, yeah.
There must have been quite a few other refugees.
Yes, a lot of Ethiopian refugees. Many of them were there because of their religion.
Okay.
Because the Ethiopian government was persecuting the evangelical believers.
Okay.
So there were evangelicals who also shared the gospel with me in Rome.
Wow.
And that's where I came to know Christ. So
that's amazing.
For so many reasons, Rome is my favorite place in the whole wide world.
Well, we need to go there
Yeah,
sometime.
yes.
I've been there a half dozen times, and I
Okay.
love it.
I love
Absolutely
Rome. Yes.
love Rome. I've never officially gone on a hike there. We could do that.
Yeah.
So you ended up going to UC Davis.
Yes.
You became a medical doctor,
Mm-hmm.
really because of your experience in Rome. It probably had not occurred to you, maybe, or maybe it did growing up, helping people.
Yeah, so now looking back, vision is 2020. I became a doctor really so that I will be involved in this mission work.
Yes, yes.
So really that's God's plan and idea, because being a doctor opens so many doors,
Right.
So that we could advance God's kingdom in many places.
So let's jump over to at backcountry.church. Our mission is to help people connect with God, others, and themselves through the enjoyment of nature. That's the tool. Now, we have a variety of message series at our website people can go to, and one of them is called Engage. Your originality unleashed. We want people to understand who they are and how God made them. You seem to have landed on your feet over the last 20 years. You're doing what God has wired you to do, what He made you to do, all those pathways, including becoming a medical doctor as a catalyst to do that. So the question is how did you get to the point where you knew? But first, we need to clarify something. When we say the Horn of Africa, what is the Horn of Africa? What does that mean?
Yes. So the Horn of Africa is a region in eastern part of Africa. It looks like the rhino's horn, where Somalia is, and it's called Horn of Africa because it resembles the rhino's horn.
And some of the nations in this region are Ethiopia, Eritrea,
Somalia,
Djibouti,
Sudan,
which-
South Sudan.
Yeah, now there's 2 Sudans.
Yes.
So
Multiplying.
we're that's a whole nother.
Sudan and South Sudan.
That's a
Yeah.
whole nother. I think the Christians are in the south,
South Sudan.
and then Islam is in the north, right?
yes.
If I'm not mistaken. Tanzania is part of it.
Yes, Kenya and Tanzania.
Okay. That's
The greater horn. Yes.
right. So how did you end up? Well, tell us what the Horn of Africa mission is, and how did you end up like doing that? How did you? Just tell the story.
So, the Horn of Africa mission was birthed back in 1999. My family and I used to attend a church called South Valley Christian Church in South San Jose. And one day there was an announcement: if there is anyone interested to take a medical mission team to India, we are looking for volunteers. And I said, that's me, I will sign up. So I led with another nurse to India. We had a wonderful ministry. So upon our return from India, Kyle asked my wife and I to join the missions committee. And I didn't know what the missions committee was, so we signed up.
I didn't either.
And it was wonderful. It was eye-opening, meeting so many missionaries from all over the country who were supported by South Valley. We learned the language of mission and all those things. And then one day, Kyle said, everybody in the missions committee must take a class called Perspectives. The church will pay for you, you must take this class. I never heard of a class called Perspective. It's a 15 weeks class, 3 hours a week, big book. And then I took that class, and every night I come home, I was like, oh my God, I felt like that was the first time I heard the gospel, and my heart get excited. And I learned in that class, in fact, I remember first class, the professor or the teacher, the instructor said about American dream. He said the American dream is to buy things you don't need with the money you don't have to impress people you don't like. So he said, don't live for this dream. It's a nightmare. Live for the kingdom dream. There is a better way to live life. And that really grabbed my heart. So from that day, I said, I make sure my wife and all my best friends take the class next time around. So a year later, all my friends, including my wife, took the class. And then we said, we must do something.
Now,
That's how we started.
Let me put perspectives on the screen here. People can go to that class now. I think it's still happening.
It's
right?
happening.
So,
Perspectives.org, a wonderful 15 weeks class. it will ruin your life to the ordinary. Guaranteed.
All right, so you took that class, you engaged with it, and then what happened?
So we said, so we must do something. So we started a church in South San Jose that's still in existence, an Ethiopian church. So we said, group of us who started that church, like say, we're not gonna have a full-time pastor. We're not gonna have any paid staff. Every penny we collect, we'll use it for mission, and then we will send missionaries in the region of the Horn of Africa where there is little or no gospel. And the first year or two, it was great. I mean, so many great things happening and so forth. But the church was growing, and an Ethiopian pastor was graduating from a seminary in Los Angeles. So everyone like said, we don't want to miss this guy. We want him to be our pastor. And as soon as he became a pastor, there was no money left for mission.
Right. Yep.
That wasn't his fault.
And that church, just to clarify, wasn't in English. It was in Amharic.
Yes.
Right?
Okay. Yes. So as soon as that happened, I asked the elders, allow me to take the vision of the mission out of the church. We'll continue supporting the missionaries we've been supporting, but I will organize it as a ministry and run it. And they were happily gave me that and took it back to South Valley, back to Kyle. And we set up a board. Kyle was one of our board members, many others. And South Valley became basically the mother for the next 7 years or so, where people give toward Horn of Africa through South Valley. South Valley wires the money and helped us greatly. And the ministry continued to grow. Started with Ethiopia and Eritrea and continued to Djibouti and Somalia and Sudan and Kenya and Tanzania. So now 20 plus years later, now we are in the Horn of Africa, in North Africa, in the Middle East. We see 26,000 house churches, over 700,000 people coming to faith, and it's just a blast.
It keeps going.
Yes.
So, do you run this?
Yes, I'm still the president. I still give a chunk of my time in leadership for this, but we have a staff here in Fresno, about 7 individuals, and then we have a bigger team in Africa. So we focus our work in Ethiopia to reach the Horn of Africa, and then in Kenya, in Egypt to work in North Africa and Middle East because of the language.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So in the first, I remember we had set a goal in the first year, see 1 million people or 10,000 churches. And I want to talk about the definition of a church, but I mean, we saw some crazy stuff happen.
Yes. So the ministry was started in 2002. So we set a goal, one meeting. We said, by 2010, we want to plant 10,000 churches. So people used to ask us, okay, how many have you started so far? One. So are you a little crazy? You could go from 1 to 10,000 in 8 years' time.
Exactly.
We said, no, we learn it in perspective. This is God's desire. I don't know how it's going to happen, but He will do it. So interestingly, 2010 came, and not us, but a team from city team went and counted the number of churches that were planted, and they found not 10,000, but more than 10,000 churches planted in the Horn of Africa. And now they have books called Miraculous Movements and other books written in the work of what God has done.
Because this is God's church.
Yes.
I mean, that's the whole point of it. Is it's not, I was talking to somebody the other day about how when a church, when an organization has an individual's name attached, this is, go back to Paul in the Bible, or Timothy's church, or Titus' church, it's going to fail. But Jesus said He will build His church.
Yes.
Now, we're talking many different languages here. I mean, Somalia has their own cult and many different tribal, that Antarctic, I can't even say
Amharic?
No. It's a very disorganized area in Somalia because of all the tribes.
Anarchy.
That's
there
it.
Is anarchy.
Thank you. That's why I have him.
So I'm teaching English to an American.
Exactly. I've always said English is my second language. So, but you have that. You have the languages in Sudan, and then of course the tribes in Kenya, and all. And how is church done? you know, when people hear the word church, they think of building. Does every church that was started or exists, do they all have a building with a nice steeple and nice benches, or do they meet outside, or what's?
Good question. So I told you 27,000 plus churches planted. We spent no money, no penny for building. So what we say about churches, a number of people coming together, read the Bible and obey the teaching of Lord Jesus and practice it in their neighborhood. That's what a church is. So if they meet under a tree, they do meet under a tree. If they meet at somebody's home, they do meet in somebody's home. If they want to build a little simple structure, it's up to them, they do that. So we don't engage in any way in the building of that, but we work on reaching the lost, bring them to Christ, providing them the Bible so that they will love the Lord Jesus and grow in the Lord. So sometimes you will meet under a church under a tree. The church under a tree is a moving experience because every time the shade moves, you have to move. And I have attended many churches like that, a beautiful church. And so a church has its own unique cultural things. In fact, this is what I tell our church planter. If you go to an unreached people group and start a church, and then you enjoy worshiping God there, you have done a terrible job. Because you've planted a church that you knew, your church, not their church. If you plant a church that is perfectly acceptable to the locals, then it will be foreign to you. You wouldn't enjoy worshiping there because it is a little foreign for you. But for the people, it is perfect. So that's why we tell them, we're not planting the church we know, the church we worship at, but we are planting a church that is culturally acceptable and of course Christ-centered, and the people will say, yeah, this is the way we worship Jesus.
And you've described backcountry.church because in the English language, as you know, church, where did you go this weekend? I went to church. It's a building. And I know that people don't want to refer to a church as a building, but it is. You can't get around that. It's an event versus the ecclesia, which is the called out ones, where we're living life together on mission to help other people connect with God, others, themselves. For us, it's through the enjoyment of nature, but through anything is just that, and then reproducing.
Yes.
And then the people in the body of that ecclesia, of that gathering, of that church, each one just uses their gifts.
That's right.
And here's the crazy part. Any gift a person has, they can use. Even in the tech world. Right? I mean, it's just amazing. I heard one person say everything you need is in that to run the ecclesia, to see it grow and expand and have other people connect with Jesus for the first time. People are there. It's just organized, some passion, some energy behind it. The Holy Spirit takes it and does it.
That's right. I love, I think it was Ralph Winter, the one who started Perspective. I heard him say once why church planting movements are so successful in places like Africa and so hard in places like the US. His point was, in Africa, the church is already there. What he meant was, people care for each other, they love each other, they live in community, they're there. All you have to do now is, okay, while we're here, let's now follow Jesus and love and follow his teaching. That's all we do. But in the state, people live their own independent life. So you have to bring them together. Let's get to know each other, build the community, and so forth and so forth. Yeah. So with church, building community is huge. And when you find a place where there is already a community, wonderful. Like bikers who bike every week together.
Exactly. That affinity.
They're there together. The
Right.
community is there.
Now
So
let's follow. That's why
bring Jesus.
there's 10 to 20 million people every week out in nature, hiking or walking in a park or whatever. And in fact, Romans 1 talks about how the creation of the world, declares, it's got God's fingerprints
Yes.
all over it.
It's
So all we're
the
doing
first
is
missionary.
yes,
Nature itself.
That's exactly right. It's
Yeah.
just pointing people to the author of that in a community. And community is the hard part of this. Now, it was 1999, and then the Horn of Africa mission got started. You're still practicing medicine at that time as you are now. What difference has the church planting movement, all these churches that have been planted, what difference has that made to the country of Ethiopia, as an example?
So at the end of the day, the gospel must transform individuals, must transform families, must transform communities. If there's no transformation, then the gospel is not the real gospel. Yeah.
Right.
I love what one guy said. If you are different, but you don't make any difference, you're just weird.
That's good.
But the gospel make you different, and
Yeah.
the gospel enable you to bring a difference.
Yes.
Then the gospel is a witness. So we see individuals, families, communities being transformed by the gospel. If you go to our website, you will see documentary, short documentary films where the whole community comes to Christ, and the police officer says, we don't have any job. We sleep all night long. Nobody bothers us anymore. They said, all the criminals now go to attend the church and they are good citizens and things like that. Where the power of the gospel transforming individuals, families, and communities, and everybody is a witness because of the gospel. This place is a safe place. Because of the gospel, we could raise our children well. Because of the gospel, I am in peace with myself and with the Lord and with each other.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and you've seen this all throughout each of these countries.
Exactly.
Whether they're small villages or larger ones. Now, when I think of Ethiopia, when I think of maybe Sudan, I've never been to Sudan. Obviously, I've seen pictures and all that. But I think of not the large cities where you can fly into, but where the majority of people, I think, live is in the rural area. I think of like when Jesus was alive, people wearing sandals and there's wells. Is that?
That's it.
That's it. That's still on the...
Yes. So life will take you back 2,000 years.
Wow.
And
that's
in
amazing.
fact, every parable of the Lord Jesus, you don't need explanation. You know it.
Interesting.
When the sower go out to sow, that's what they do still. So you don't need somebody to explain what's going on. So for the gospel, the stories, it's really applicable. And people hear, they say, yes, even the Eastern culture, how wedding happens, and all those things are very applicable. It's a beautiful, beautiful connection. God has left a lot of things in their
Intact,
culture,
right.
so that the gospel could get attached.
I never thought about that. That's pretty insightful. Now, let's circle back to my question on how is it that you found your fit? You found your spot. You talked about being an immigrant and then that pathway to become a medical doctor. You talked about perspectives. What was it that one day you woke up and you thought, this is what I want to do the rest of my life? And then how did you keep doing it? And you're still thriving. It doesn't mean there's not problems, but there's still that passion. There's still evidence that what's happening is growing.
So that's a call, yeah? A calling. Everybody has a different calling. I even still remember when I came to America, I told my family members I want to be a doctor. And they said, it's hard to be a doctor. Maybe try to be a nurse. That would be an easier way to be a nurse. And there's nothing wrong to be a nurse. That's a good profession. But I always say, no, I want to be in medicine. I want to be in the top. I want to know the whole thing.
Right.
That was kind of my calling, and I want to see the big picture. I want to be working from the top aspect of medicine. So when I took perspective and saw God's world and God's heart, that God is a missionary God. God has a dream, and his dream is one day people from every tribe, from every language, from every people to worship him. And today, out of 17,700 people groups, there are still 7,400 people groups yet to hear the gospel. And this is God's vision. That grabbed me. I said, this is it. This is not ministry. This is a big picture. This is what God is doing. I want to be in the middle of it, and I want to give my life toward that. So we have witnessed amazing fruits. We've been to people groups who never heard the gospel before. 3-4 years later, now they are worshipers. And as far as we know, heaven for the first time being worshipped in their own mother tongue for the first time.
Wow.
Just Jesus receiving praise and worship from a people group after 2,000 years for the first time. What a joy. So I think and I truly believe when we work with God to accomplish his vision, his dream, we find our place in that. And so we play a small role in the Horn of Africa, North Africa, Middle East, to bring access of the gospel to those who have little or no access to the gospel. And still a lot of work to do. What we've seen is amazing, but I really believe the best is yet to come. And that's why it excites me to push forward.
And you've really found your fit in that. And I think you said something super important, that in religious terms, you're not a pastor, you're not a priest, you're a medical doctor, and you're just using your gift, partnering with God, going in his direction with his mission, and you're just trying to keep in step with him.
Yes.
And that would be the invitation that God has for all of us.
Yes.
That partner with me, God, in whatever you do.
Yes.
And you will find your spot.
Exactly. Let me quote, if I remember it right, Acts 13:36. The Apostle Paul, on his first missionary journey, he started talking about David. And he says, David.
You started talking about what?
David. He started talking about David's life.
Oh, David.
King David. Yeah. So he said, David, in his own generation, he serves God's plan. So King David, he was the father of the smartest man, King Solomon. He was the richest man because when Solomon built the temple, he provided all the resources.
Right.
He was the best king for 40 years. He was a king. He was a courageous young man. When he was a young man, he killed Goliath.
Right.
So there was a lot of things he could be talking about him, but all he said was he serves God's purpose in his generation. Yeah. So that was the highlight for the life of King David. So all of us, we shouldn't leave what the Bible did not talk about King David's life. Try to be the richest man, or try to be the most powerful person, or try to be the best dad, or the best grandpa, the best this, the best that. Those are all good, but at the end of the day, we must serve God's purpose.
And those are the outcomes of it.
Of that.
Secondary.
But the focus must be serving God and his purpose.
I love it. Absolutely. It is amazing what happens when we step into God's rhythm and understand that God created us. Nobody's a mistake. Nobody's here on accident. You have a purpose, and God is for you. He's not against you, and he wants you to be part of his family. Where you're at, regardless of what age you're at, or what your social, economic, like none of that matters.
Yes. If we have time, let me tell one story. A beautiful story. You find this story in Luke 15. The prodigal son. He took what the father is supposed to give him after he passes, and he went a faraway place. He lost everything, and he was away from the father. He was desperate. And then the Bible says one day he returned to his heart, and then he started a message. He said, I'm going to go to my father, and I will tell him, I shouldn't be your child again, but receive me as one of your servants. So that was his hope. hopefully my dad will receive me and I will be one of his servants, not his son again. So all this time, life was without his father, without thinking the father, without involving the father in his thought process and in his life choices. He was living by himself. As soon as he brought the father in the picture and went back to the father, he was very much surprised. God, the father, gave him a ring, shoes, he killed a fattened animal for a party. It was a huge thing. So when we live life without the father, without our creator, without God, life looks terrible. As soon as we come and involve him and bring him into the formula of life, how we live life, everything will be a surprise in a positive way, in a great positive way. God will show us a way. This is his plan, this is his idea. I tell people, if God invites you for lunch, he doesn't expect you to pay for it. So when he takes us to the mission field and asks us to do this, he gives us all the resources we need.
Right.
It's a joy for us.
God's work done in God's way will not lack God's supply.
Yes.
This is a big one.
Yeah.
Hey, I have a couple other questions, if you don't mind. I want to hear your craziest story ever, like being out somewhere in the Horn of Africa. While you're thinking about that, how do you involve medical in the Horn of Africa mission? I mean, do you do any medical work or?
Not really. I'm internist in my medical field. Internists depend on medicine, so we write prescription, and the person supposed to go buy that medicine and start taking it to take care of his blood pressure or heart disease or diabetes or whatever. So in most places where we do mission work, there's no medicine. So you could diagnose someone, you got diabetes,
but then what? Right. Now I remember one time you told me about malaria medicine.
Yes. So what we do now is, as much as possible, we ask local physicians to give us their time, and they will go to unreached community and they will do, let's say, a 1 week medical camp. So they will take 10 of the brightest people, often our church planters. So half day they do practical work with the doctors, half day they do class work on malaria, for example, where malaria is huge in many parts of Africa.
Kills a lot of people.
Yes, in fact it kills more than anything else, including AIDS. So
wow.
So in 1 week they become really specialists on malaria. They know how to diagnose, how to treat. So that opens many doors for these church planters
to
go
huge.
to the communities. They say, I'm here to help you, and I will tell you about Jesus as well.
Malaria is a wicked disease.
Yes.
So what's like the craziest event you've ever had? Or
I'm not sure it is crazy, but I'm a simple man. I like to dress simple, act simple, live simple. And one time I was in a remote part of Ethiopia where there is amazing work. We support people there. I've been there 3-4 times before there to visit. So the leader of that movement asked me, hey, can I talk to you? And usually I know when they say, can I talk to you? That means they need more support.
Right.
The work is growing. Can you help us? So he said, I know you give everything you have and you serve sacrificially. I know that because this is the third time you're coming to visit us. And all these 3 times, you were the same shoes, the same shirt, the same clothes. So you probably don't have enough money to change clothes. I was surprised they pay attention what I'm wearing, even though that was not the case. But they thought, okay,
That's
this guy
awesome.
does not have much money. He's wearing the same clothes 3 times in a row.
That's pretty crazy. Do you use humanitarian means like to plant churches, to start groups of Christ followers who are then helping others become Christ followers? Do you use humanitarian means?
In fact, right now in northern Ethiopia there is a civil war. And northern Ethiopia has been very, very hard for the gospel. They are against the evangelicals, but now because of this civil war there is a lot of hunger, there is a lot of trauma, So we've been sending resources to feed these people. We've been sending teams to do trauma counseling. And all these things have opened the door wide open. Before the war, they will never take a bread from an evangelical. Now they are so hungry, they are open-heartedly receiving support. So because of that, in fact, in July, we sent 70 more missionaries to this part to do mission work, because now we see these amazing wide open doors.
And if somebody wanted to provide the Horn of Africa money so that you could continue to feed people, can they do that?
Yes, and the need are always huge, and every penny people give us, we use it. We have little or no expense on our side. All our staff on this side raise their own support to do the ministry. So we will be greatly grateful, and we will use every penny for the purpose people give.
Good, and we'll make sure we put that on the screen here at the end. But I have a feature, I haven't told you about this. I have a feature at the end called Where to Next. Now, you told me around here where you live, there's some trails. You go hiking and walking quite a bit.
Yes, I have two other friends. One live in Kansas, one live in Pennsylvania. For this year, 2022, we said, let's walk 40 miles a week so that we will walk at least 22 miles this year.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah. So we've been walking.
So you've been walking 40 miles a week?
Yes. Most weeks I've been walking 40 miles a week.
And here I thought you just sat at a desk and ate bonbons or something. I don't know.
On most days I walk 3 to 5 miles. And then 2 days a week on my day off, I walk 15 miles.
Okay, I've known him for a long time. I had no idea he did that. Okay, so where to next? Where in the world would you like to go, whether it's somewhere in the States or somewhere around the world, whether for the Horn of Africa or just for fun, where to next?
My wife and I, a month ago, took a 4-country European tour. And by far, both of us agree, the best place ever we've been was where we were in Lucerne, Switzerland.
Oh, Switzerland.
A city called Lucerne.
Lucerne, yeah, sure.
And by the lake, the Alps, beautiful, heavenly city.
Wow. So would you like to go back there?
I would love, and I'm sure we will go back.
I love it.
My wife said, we need to come back here. It's a very beautiful place.
That's amazing. Markos, this has been a great time. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Hey, backcountry.church, if you haven't downloaded the app, this is actually where we find community right now. It's through our app. There's groups there. But if you haven't downloaded the app, make sure you go to Google Play, the Apple App Store to do that. Make sure you follow, like, subscribe on all of our social media outlets. Markos, you're awesome, dude.
Thank you.
God bless.
God bless.